Okay. Day 2 of stats, we're going to need those notes packets out, and then you are going to need technology today. So you either need your iPad with the Desmos app downloaded onto it, or you need to go find one of my desktop computers and plant yourself in front of there, okay? Phones are not going to work today because we are taking that quiz. So iPad or computer, and go to Desmos. Okay? Just like day 1 of these notes, we're going to start off heavy with some vocab, okay? We're just going to talk through these definitions. A lot of these you've already heard before, okay? So not all of these are going to be new. And then we'll show you some shortcuts on Desmos on how to find these and make things really easy, okay? So we're going to start off with mean, okay? Another word for mean is just the average. Okay, how do I find an average of a data set?
Add all the numbers together and then divide it by how many numbers you have.
You got it. Perfect, Olivia. Okay, add up all the numbers together and then divide by how many numbers you have. That's perfect. Okay. If you ever go on to take another stats class after this one, okay, notations will be really big, okay, because we don't want to write those words out every time. We're really not going to hit on these super hard this year. But again, if you ever take stats later, they'll notate mean as X bar, just X with a little line above it, or the Greek letter mu. Okay, one day if you ever join a sorority or a fraternity, you're going to have to memorize the Greek alphabet, okay? Maybe that'll make a little more sense. But so that's just the notation, not really super important today, but just know that if you see that, that's what it means. Standard deviation. This is just how spread out your data is, okay? The spread of the data. So like for instance, okay, let's say that everybody got an A on the quiz last class, okay? That would mean that those data points would be pretty close together, right? Okay, they would have a pretty narrow spread. However, let's say that I had scores all across the board. I had A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's, okay? That data would be more spread out, okay? It would have a greater spread is what we call it, okay? Greater standard deviation. So just know that that's what that means. Minimum and maximum are exactly what they sound like. Okay, there's only one of each. So there'll be one low point, that's your minimum, one high point, that's your maximum. Okay. The range. This is one that Desmos actually won't do. Okay, it is up on the board though. Range is just your maximum minus your minimum. Okay, so Desmos is going to tell you what your max and min are. They're also very easy to find. But to find the range, you're just subtracting your high point minus your low point. Okay, make sure we know that. Next one is median. Okay, that just means your middle value. Okay, cool. So we're going to talk through an example of this. Okay, let's say that for instance, I gave you okay, let's say I gave you these points right here, okay? What would be the median? 7, okay, because it's the middle point, okay? That would be my median. Are we all good with that? It's 3 points on the left and 3 points on the right, okay? So that's how we know it's the median. Okay, let's say that, for instance, I added another point on here, okay? Now I have an even amount of points, right? Is there a middle number there? No, okay, because again, I have an even number of points. So how I'm going to find my median, my middle term, is I'm going to take the 2 middle points and I'm going to find their average or their mean, okay? What would be the average of 7 and 8? Yeah, 7.5, okay? So my median, I'm just abbreviating it. It would just be 7.5, okay? Are we all cool with that? So just finding the average of the 2 in the middle if you have an even amount of points, okay? The next part, bless you. The next part, and this might be a little bit new, okay? We call these lower quartile and upper quartile, okay? And all these are the medians of each side of your data, okay? So the lower quartile is going to be the median of the lower half of the data. The upper quartile is going to be the median of the upper half of your data. Okay, and we notate these as Q1 and Q3. That is kind of important. Okay, we will use those notations today. So, how this looks. We're going to go back to my original set of data. You don't have to write this down, just be following along with me. Okay, if I take this 15 back out. So, we said for this lineup here that 7 was our median, right? Okay, because we had an odd set of points, so we did have a middle term there. Okay, so if I were finding the median of the lower half of the data, I would be just looking at these points to the left of the mean. Okay, what would be the middle term there, or the middle number there? It'd be 3. Okay, so this would be my lower quartile, or my Q1. What would be the middle of the upper side of my data? 9. Okay, we would call this Q3. Okay, some textbooks, some stats classes are also going to abbreviate your median as Q2, which makes sense because it's between Q1 and Q3. Okay, just know if you see Q2, that's the same thing as the median. Okay, are you okay with that? Okay, and then real quick, if I had that other set of data, if I add the 15 back on, okay, so these same numbers, but I add that 15 on, okay? We already said that our median, okay, we'll just go ahead and abbreviate Q2, was 7.5, right? Was 7.5 an actual data point on this? It wasn't, okay? So what we would do here to find our Q1 and our Q3 would be we'd split our data into the lower and upper half, just like we did before, but both those numbers in the middle are going to be included this time, okay? We can see how when we had an odd set of data, that 7 was not included in the lower or the upper half, because again, it separated them. But here, my median is 7.5, okay? And that's not an actual point. So I'm just going to split my data down the middle, half and half. So if I were finding the middle of my lower quartile there, okay, the median there, what would that be? Of these 4 numbers. What would it be? Yeah, 3.5. The average of 3 and 4 would be 3.5. So that'd be Q1. Sorry, put the 1 there. That'd be Q1. And then what would Q3 be? Yeah, the average between 9 and 13 would be 11. Just add those up and divide by 2. Okay? What questions do we have there? Okay, you're going to find that Desmos actually, it does this for you. Okay, it makes it really easy. But since we've never seen lower and upper quartile before, I did just want to give you that example just so that way it made sense on what you're actually finding there. Okay? Any questions on that? Nothing? Okay. Almost done. So next up, we've got what we call the inner quartile range. All this means is Q3 minus Q1. Okay, upper quartile minus lower quartile. Desmos won't do that for you, but it does give you Q3 and Q1, so you just have to subtract them on your own, which is easy. Okay, that's also up on the board. And then the last one is what we call outliers. Anybody ever heard of an outlier? Give me the definition of an outlier in your own words. It could be simple. You've heard of it before. What's an outlier? Okay, like a data point that's out, right? Okay. Basically what it is, it's a data point that is way too high or way too low, okay? For instance, let's say that everybody in here got like an A or a B on their test, okay? And then somebody wasn't here, so I put their grade in as a 0, okay? Because if I don't do that, then you guys don't show up to take your test if you're missing one. So that did happen. So what happens there is that my class average probably went from like a high B all the way down to like a C or a D, because that one outlier, that 1 0, affected your class average. Okay, so these are just extreme values. They don't really necessarily apply for the rest, or sorry, they don't follow the pattern of the rest of the data. Okay, that 0 was really far away from the 80s and the 90s, but they exist. Okay, so we do have to account for them. So how we find these are with these formulas right here, which are also up on the board. Okay, and we do have to do these by hand, but they're not very difficult. So we will talk about these when we get to our example. What questions do you have? Okay, so where that iPad or laptop or whatever you got comes in. My table looks funky because something happened with my formatting, but I think the ones on your sheet look better. Okay, but these are all the GPAs of 30 students. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to plug these into Desmos and let Desmos do the hard work for me. Okay, so how we're going to do that is you're going to go onto Desmos, and there should be a little plus button in the left corner. You're going to hit that and then hit the table option. And then going down on that X1 column of your table, you're going to put each of these points in their own row. Okay, so each row under X1 should have all of these points. Okay, so in total you should have 30 rows when you type all of these in. So I'm going to give you a minute to go ahead and do that. Okay, so once you have that typed in, okay, you'll notice that the notes are asking for a lot, okay? They're asking for all of these functions. So how we're going to do this is you're going to go onto a new row underneath that table. I'll show you here in a minute. You'll go to a new row, and then you'll put each one of these functions in, okay? And how you do that is you hit the functions button and then scroll down to statistics, and most of them are going to be right there, okay? So we'll start with mean. Okay, so 3.415, we'd put that here. And then we want to find the function for standard deviation. Okay, it's the one that says STDEV. Don't pick the one that's got the P behind it, because that would be wrong. Rounding it to 0.546. Okay. The next thing we're going to do, so this is kind of a cool little shortcut that Desmos does for me. Okay. If I use the function that's called stats, S-T-A-T-S, it'll actually give me 5 of these things at one time. Okay, so and we fill those 5 numbers in. So 2.04, 4.0. Okay. So that was kind of nice because it gave me everything else that Desmos is going to give me for this, okay? And then everything else I've actually got to do math to find. But it's not hard math, okay? And all the formulas are right up there for you. So, or they're on the first page of your notes. So we'll start with range. How am I finding the range? Yep, max minus min. So what is 4.0 minus 2.04? 1.96, perfect. Okay, how am I finding the IQR? Yep, Q3 minus Q1, so 3.87 minus 3.2 is what? Yep, 0.67. Okay, and then we have our outliers. So once again, these formulas are up there. This one is a little bit more confusing though. Okay, so we're going to do this together. I'm going to walk you through it. So first things first, we're going to find our low outliers if we have any. Okay, so how we do that, it says up there on the board, I'm looking for anything below, so any number below Q1 minus 1.5 times the IQR. So, do I know what Q1 is? Absolutely. What is it? 3.2. Do I know what the IQR is? What is it? 0.67. So I'm just going to type that into my calculator. 3.2 minus 1.5 parentheses 0.67. And see what you get. 2.195. Perfect. Did everybody get that? Okay, so what this means is that I'm looking for any, I could say anything, or any number, because that's what we're dealing with, any number that is below 2.195. Okay, so how we do that is we just go look at all your points. Okay, are any of these numbers below 2.195? 2.1, perfect. And 2.04, are those the only two? Yes. Okay, so I'm boxing in both of those. Both of those numbers are outliers. Okay, they are low outliers. And then lastly, I've got to check for my high outliers. Okay, so how I'm going to do that is the same thing, same formula or similar formula, but it's also up there on the board. So I'm looking for any number that's above, oops, why won't this move? Okay, Q3 plus 1.5 times my IQR. So I'm going to go plug those in. What is my Q3? 3.87 plus 1.5 times my IQR, 0.67, good. And what is that? 4.875. So once again, I'm looking for any number above this number. Okay, do I have any numbers that are above 4.875? Unfortunately, I don't. Okay, which I shouldn't say unfortunately. I guess fortunately that'd be something. So there are no high outliers. Okay, so what you'll find is that sometimes you have low outliers, sometimes you have high outliers, sometimes you have both or neither. Okay, it just depends on the data that you have. But this is how you check for those. Okay, it's always going to be those same formulas. Does anybody have any questions there? No? We're good with that? Okay. The next thing that we're doing is we are building a box and whisker plot, okay? Desmos does do this for us, but I do want you to know how to do it by hand, so we are going to do it by hand. Will you ever see this again? Probably not, but the state of Missouri says it's important, so that's why we're learning it, okay? They're actually kind of fun. The first thing you got to do for this, though, is to find that 5-number summary, which is nice that Desmos does that for me, so we are going to still use that, okay? So minimum equals 2.04. Once again, we find this 5-number summary just by looking at this or using the stats function on Desmos. So I'm just pulling that back out. Okay? We good with that so far? You know how to find that? Okay. So the next thing we got to do is we've got to make our number line or our scale, just like we did for the dot plots, okay? So if I look, my lowest point to highest point, I'm going from 2.04 to 4, okay? What would it make sense to go up by on my number line? Would you go up by 5s, 10s, 20s? Where would you start? Or would you maybe just go up by 1s? Probably 1s, okay? And really, I just need to start at 2, right? I only need to go to 4. Okay? I might go ahead and just put 1/4 markers in there just to keep myself a little more organized. But that's really all I need for my number line. Okay. Once we have that, the next part that we're going to do is going to be the box. Okay. And this is the easiest part. So your box is always made from your middle 3 numbers here. of your 5-number summary. So the box is going to be Q1, median, and Q3. So if I look, the first line of my box is Q1. That's at 3.2, which is roughly right here. So I'm going to make a vertical line right there. My median's at 3.495, so that is about right here. And my Q3 is 3.87, which is about right here. Okay, this isn't perfect, but we get the picture. So, box and whisker plot, there's the box part. Okay. Next thing we have to do is we do have to account for our outliers, okay, because they do affect this. So, did I have outliers for this? I did. I had how many? 2, and were they low or high? They were both low, okay? So, I'm going to go put those on my number line, and I'm just going to draw those as just like teeny tiny little stars, okay? You could make them dots or whatever you want to do. I'm just going to make mine little stars. So, 2.04 and 2.1. I'm just labeling the numbers so that way I can see where they are. But those are just my little outliers there. I might put the numbers above. Okay. Might go ahead and label my box too so I can just see where those are. Okay. You with me so far? So we got the box. We got the outliers, and now the last thing is just the whiskers, okay, which sound about as weird as they are. But basically what the whiskers do is that they go to your maximum and minimum points, okay? However, if your max and mins are outliers, they can't go to an outlier, okay? They would just need to go to the next point. So what I mean by that, okay, if I look on my low side, we said that the minimum was 2.04, right? But isn't that an outlier? Yeah, so this line cannot extend that far. Okay, so then what I'd want to do is find my next lowest point, which would be 2.1, but that's also an outlier, right? So again, it can't go that far. So what would be the next lowest point after 2.04 and 2.1? 2.45? Is that what you said? Did anyone double check that? Is that what we found? Okay. So 2.45 is going to be right about here. And that is going to be the left whisker. Okay, it's going to go to that next lowest point. So once again, it would have went to the minimum, but the minimum was an outlier. So it had to go to the next lowest point, okay? The right side though, this whisker always goes to the maximum. Is the maximum an outlier? What is the maximum? It's 4, and that's not an outlier, right? Okay, so this whisker actually can go to that maximum, and it will. It will go to 4. Beautiful. Okay. So that is how we make this plot, okay? Will Desmos do this for me? Yes, it will, okay? How you do that is you go into a new line and you type the word box plot with parentheses and you put that column on the inside. So we'll go do that real quick. No questions on this? Okay, so on that next page, it gives you a box plot already drawn and it just asks you some questions about it, okay? So I want you to go try that. The only problem is that once again, the formatting on this document for some reason really messed up this year. So this should say 10, 14, 20, 30, 35, 55, and 58. Okay, so go ahead and fill in all of those blanks for me. Okay, What is the minimum here? 10. It's my low point. What's the maximum? It is 58. Okay, your max and min can still be outliers. Okay. The whiskers just can't go to the outliers. What's the range? 48, because 58 minus 10 is 48. What's the median? 20. Median's going to be the middle of the box. The middle line on the box. Lower quartile. 14. That's the left line on the box. And the upper quartile. 30. The right line on the box. What is the IQR?
60.
Okay, 16, because 30 minus 14 is 16. And then outliers, what do we got?
55.
Are they low or high outliers?
The high outlier.
They're both high outliers, good. One thing too that I failed to mention with this, okay? This is a really weird way to display data, but one cool thing about it is that 75% of all of your data should fall within the box region, okay? So what I mean by that is, like, for instance, on the last example that we did, we had 30 students, GPAs, right? Okay, so 3/4 of that data, 75% of those students, their data points would have fallen in the box, okay? And then the other 25% would have been around it, so either the whiskers or the outliers, or all of it, okay? So once again, 75% of your data, 3/4 of your data points should fall within the boxed region of your box plot, okay? That is important to know, because that might be on the quiz in some way, shape, or form. What other questions do you have? Nothing? Okay, take some time to, yes, Morgan.
So when you do like the rest of them, like median and stuff like that, do you mind for the outliers? Like, does the outliers only apply to like the max, min, range?
No, so like when we're looking at like the lower quartile, upper quartile, and the median, since this box plot's already drawn for me, those are already there. Those are the lines of the box, yeah. So like always the first line of the box is going to be your Q1, and then the middle line is going to be your median or your Q2, and the last line is your Q3. Okay? Yep, you don't have to do any math if it's already given to you. But if you're finding it, then yes, absolutely, the outliers, they're always part of the data, okay? But the whiskers can never go to the outliers, if that makes sense, okay? They would go to the next point. But the outliers still count as maximums or minimums. Okay? Any other questions? That was a great question. Anything else? Okay, take some time, review this with your buddies if you want to. And then when you're ready, we will do that activity. So